we are now joined by LEE OSKAR. How are you, LEE?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've got such a rich musical history. Just wanted to kind of go back. I know you started playing the harmonica at the age of 6. Talk about your early introduction to music and who inspired you and what musical artists did you look up to?
Well, let me put it this way. The music industry back then wasn't, at least not in my world, in Denmark, there wasn't any hype that I'm aware of where it's like mainstream today. Every kid wants to be a rock and roll star. And I mean, back then, I loved music, and most people obviously do, and I was fascinated and the only source I would hear music would be a radio. And radio back then, you might call it eclectic, or maybe world beat. It would have Perry Como sing Melody d'Amour, and then maybe a Louis Armstrong, and then the next minute it would be Ray Charles, or it would be a piece of Björling, an opera singer, or it was just, it was music. It wasn't categories like people are so fixated today.
Sure.
And so I would just love it. Once in a while I would get to hear radio and hear music. When I got my first harmonica at 6 years old, typically harmonica, which I tell people today, it's like the only instrument that musically can make you feel like you're making music from the get-go. You just breathe in and out, and it sounds like you can make a symphony, So from the day one when I got my harmonica, which was given to me by an American who came to visit us, and back in 1954, that was the end thing that summer, and I was in love with it. I love it. Just hearing the sounds that came out of the harmonica made me feel like I was making music. That's pretty much how it started, and I haven't stopped.
Well, I know Ray Charles was an early influence. What was it about Ray's music, and what were some of the other artists you enjoyed?
Well, Ray Charles, actually, I did hear the name Ray Charles, but I was never really, back then, influenced in any way at all. None of it was any specific influence. But when I came to the United States, and when I came to L.A., actually, I got my first turntable I ever owned. I bought a used turntable, and my first album that I got was called Crying Time, and that just opened up my mind to phrasing and the way he sings is what I like to think that I do on harmonica is, my voice is the harmonica. I sing through my harmonica, and his phrasing has been by far the biggest influence since I came to L.A. and heard Crying Time.
Sure. Well, talk about traveling to the U.S. at that early age. I know you hit New York about 18, and then you, through Toronto and San Francisco, ended up in L.A. What were your first impressions about coming to, which is now your new homeland, and certainly the melting pot of so much great music, and how did you eventually gravitate towards Los Angeles?
Well, first of all, I have to say anybody who comes to the United States would be considered a big shot unless you were a refugee, basically. And America to me was bigger than life. I mean, it was like, back then, I think the only best way I can say it is the music industry, the rock and roll and all the things that start coming up to made it very exciting for a youngster, was pretty much out of either England or United States. And, a matter of fact, we know that everywhere in the world, if you got a gig somewhere, you had to sing the top 10 tunes that came out of the United States or England, and even if you didn't speak English, you would have to sing them. If you even had a chance to get a gig in some club, whatever country you were in. So, for me to come to the United States, and try to seek out a career, making it in the music business was like the ultimate. That was like there was no compromise. There was nothing. It wasn't like, well, maybe I'll try and do this, and if it doesn't work after a couple of years, I think I'll try and get a day job. I mean, it was nothing like that. It was like, I think I had maybe a 1% talent and 99% desire. I was just so compassionate to want to be acknowledged in what I loved and always dreamed of doing is music. So America was the hub for that, big time. And through my travels, I was on the streets and just try to make it to Los Angeles, because LA was known as that was the hub, that was the main industry, and somebody told me they have a connection with somebody. That was good enough. I didn't even have to scrutinize it or figure out if it was for real or not. I mean, it was like I just went with the wind, and when I finally came to Los Angeles, being on the streets, I met Eric Burden, and then things started to take off from there.
So, how did you gravitate to start playing with Lonnie Jordans and Howard Scott and Harold Brown, B.B. Dickerson, Papa D. Allen, Charles Miller? How did that all come about? Through Eric?
Yeah, well, kind of. We can. If you want me to get into more detail on that slice of life there, sure. I was in L.A., basically on the streets. I was in this rehearsal hall where this band was playing, and I sat in with them, and the management, whoever they were, I don't remember the names, of that garage band that was rehearsing there, wanted me to be part of it, and I'd love to be part of have a band with me, but I was scared once again of these maybe shysters or these managers. I didn't want to be part of that, and I was at a time where I was concerned about being in the country in the United States, and maybe had to go back to Denmark or whatever, and I was threatened by them, and all this stuff. But to get to the point was, I was looking for a record deal for me and that band, and I went to A&M Records, and the receptionist, I didn't know nothing. I mean, I was so green about this stuff. I thought she was the record company, and she was yelling at somebody, said, "Get this hippie out of here." I was asking for like $300. And that was like a huge amount of money to get a demo made, or to show them that I really would be a good fit for them. And so A&M, I got kicked out of there, and I had met this guy who, his name is Chris Huston, who came up to me at when we do these things. It felt like a delicatessen. You stand in line, and there's like 20 bands, and maybe 5 gets to play for free for that day. The clubs used to get free entertainment. So I was like with this band, stand in line, and fortunately we got a window open for us to play, and then this guy Chris Huston came up, gave me his card, and told me that he has a studio, and so I got very excited about that opportunity. I went to Chris Huston's studio, and he said, I said, I want to do a demo. Can I use some free time there? And he says, not unless you sign a deal with me. And I said, and I was fixated on going to A&M Records, so I was kind of really down that was like the last straw, and I figured maybe I'll go back to Denmark. I sat in the lobby. A guy comes out of the studio, it was Jerry Goldstein, with a Coleman piece of paper saying, is there any harmonica players in this world? And I didn't even respond then. I just kind of sat there kind of numb, not knowing what I'm going to do next. And then some kid came running up. He took him into the studio. I guess he was a harmonica player they called up. And seconds later, the guy came back out. I guess he didn't happen. He didn't wasn't the right thing for Jerry Goldstein. And all of a sudden, I put my hand up. I had one harmonica to my name, and I said, I play harmonica. And so he took me to the studio, put the headphones on, and I started like in fifth gear. I mean, there was no taste. I didn't compliment anything. I was just so excited to play. And he got so excited about it, he gave me $10. And that's how I met Jerry Goldstein. And then later that day or next day, already had met Eric Burton going to these jam sessions where he would also come in, and we both would sit in with geez, I just forgot the name. And Mike Panera was in the band. They did Right Captain Right. What was the Blues
Image?
Blues Image, thank you. And they would play at a club called damn, I'm just blanking now out on that too. But this club, a guy named Marshall Brevitz owned, or called The Experience. And there was always jam sessions there. So that's how I met Eric. And then after this episode of at Chris Huston's studio and left for $10, I went to the Whiskey A Go-Go, but they would let me in for free because I had already met Hugh Masekela, and so Almo or Mario at the Whiskey A Go would let me in. And when I walked in, there's a booth, like the celebrity booth, and there's Eric Burton sitting next to Jerry Goldstein, Steve Gold, who I met that night, and Chris Huston. So they're all like saying, "Oh, this is Lee," and Eric says, "Yeah, I know Lee," and so that kind of was a springboard for me and Eric to get together, as Eric was looking for a band, and Blues Image was going to be a backup band, but then they got that record deal with Atco Records, and Atco Records with Right Captain Right. So we went to this club, Eric and I, and checked out this band called The Night Shift, and they were like a backup band for a famous football player named Deacon Jones. And I came in there with Eric. It was like a packed house in North Hollywood, and called the Ragdoll. That's the name of the club, Ragdoll. Now I think then it became FM station. I don't even know what it is today, if it exists.
Or on Lancashire.
Yeah, and so we went in there, and then after Deacon Jones did his singing debut with the band, they did their set, and I jumped up on stage and sat in with them. And then that kicked it off. Then the next day, we all went into Hollywood. Everybody made their way to this meeting, sat around the swimming pool. Eric Burton, the guys, the nucleus of that band, not B.B. Dickerson. B.B. Dickerson was in Hawaii. A guy named Peter Rosen was the bass player for a moment there. And we all sat around the swimming pool and came up with the name and talked about, doing this and that. And so that was just the right time, where all these other things you struggle and you try to do, and you never know when it happens. And this was my golden opportunity that got me everything that I'm even here today,
So Spill the Wine was obviously what we got introduced to from that, and
yes.
it was such an eclectic song. I mean, with the whole spoken intro and all that. Tell us about making, Spill the Wine.
Okay. I ended up staying at Eric's house up in what the hell is that hills now? Anyhow, Laurel Canyon.
Laurel Canyon?
Yeah. And I was staying there, and he and I was getting a ride with him to one of our first gigs, which was in San Bernardino. I don't remember the name of the place, Lizard something maybe, but it used to be a bowling alley that was a venue where we did like one of the first gigs as Eric Burton wore. And on the way there, he was talking about this idea he had. Carmen was his girlfriend living with him there at the house, and he was talking about having a thing called like spill the alcohol, spill the wine, and take that pearl. And pearl was, the LSD. A lot of people think it was take that girl, but it was take that pearl. And So he was talking about doing like a Spanish kind of a Latin groove with Carmen speaking Spanish, you know, and telling the story about being in Hollywood and Spill the Wine. That's the story, you know, that he. So he basically came up with the lyrics and the story that he had planned to do, and he was telling me he had planned. And the keyboard player Lonnie just played that cliche kind of a rip, do da do da do da do da do da. You know, that same thing. That's, you know, it's the hallmark of all you know, Latin grooves. And we just kind of jammed that, and then me and Charles came up with the hook line, da 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 da. And that's how it evolved. We were like a jam band, starting with an idea from somewhere. And in this particular case, it was Eric with his lyrics and me doing this jam. And if I may add, Eric Burden back then, because of the Animals, was signed to MGM Records. And Mike Curb was the president of MGM Records back then. He was the one responsible for the Osmond brothers and the Osmond, you know, family or whatever. And he wouldn't let Eric out of the agreement. And the agreement Eric was binded to was carried over from the Animals, was actually that that anything, if Eric wrote anything, just like the Animals, if wrote anything, MGM would own the publishing. And all I can tell you is that because Eric Burden was partners with Steve Gold and Jerry Goldstein, they were the publishing company for Out Music. And being for Out Music, instead of it going to MGM Records, Eric didn't take claim for the lyrics. So we, the seven of us, got credit as writers for all of it. We really didn't write the lyrics; we just wrote the music. But we got credit for all of it. And that way, supposedly Eric Burden with Jerry and Steve could keep the publishing.
Sure.
How do you like that, huh?
Wow. Well, you know, this was around the time that FM radio came about and freeform radio, and, you know, the old AM radio was now becoming, you know, just top 40, and obviously this more innovative, more improvisational type music that you were making was perfect, you know, for freeform radio. Now tell us, as Eric left the band, how the band, you know, evolved, you know, as we know it today, War with All Day Music and Slipping into Darkness and Cisco Kid and Me and Baby Brother. How did that evolve, and what are your greatest memories of making those songs and hits?
Well, that's a lot of things. Last question. The first thing I want to say is that Eric Burden was the superstar. You know, he was like up there with Mick Jagger and everybody else, and you know, coming out of the Animals and that. So he was like a golden egg for other people's opportunities. I mean, that's cut and dry what it is. And being partners, see, when I went with Eric, let me just back up a little. When I was hanging with Eric and trying to and going to be part of what Eric's going to put together, he was tormented between either going with Steve Gold, Jerry Goldstein, as being a business partners, or going with Phil Spector. And so me and Eric went to see Phil Spector about the possibility of Eric maybe connecting with Phil Spector on some future business thing, which was Phil Spector wanted to produce his next album. And to me, Phil Spector, you know, being the kid, and I was like a fly on the wall, and I was like, man, you got to go with Phil Spector, you know, who are these other guys, you know. But he wanted to be more associated, I guess, from all the trivial things he's been through with the Animals and Mike Jeffries and feel like he's been ripped off and yada, 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 that he wanted to be, you know, with two intelligent guys like Steve Gold and Jerry Goldstein as part of the business and so on and so on. So that's the choice he made. In that choice, and I'm along here now with Eric for Eric Burden and War, the idea was always talked about is that Eric Burden had a backup band called War. And with MGM Records, it it was very clever. Steve Gold was the brilliant guy. He's passed away. He was brilliant. He named the first album we did called Eric Burdon Declares War. So basically, it's on MGM Records. MGM don't have the band War. Mike Curb doesn't have it, but he's assuming something that he has. They were promoting the band War through Eric's, through his window, so to speak. So it was like announcing Eric Burdon Declares War. And the idea was, as we were a backup band, and we also played gigs in England, these tours, we would open up. War would open up, and then Eric comes on, and then we are the backup band for Eric. So the idea was to build that image and then make the deal for the backup band as a separate entity, through Steve Gold and Jerry Goldstein and Eric Burdon. We would have a deal, and the deal was made with United Artists. And that was Mike Stewart, and he made the deal. And so he wanted to make sure that he actually had the band War, the individual names, as you know, the original guys, including me, are, because Mike Curb was claiming that he had the band War. But anyhow, we made a deal with United Artists with a paper that all 7 are signed with our names to let Mike Stewart know that we are the 7 guys under that name War that has been backing up Eric Burdon. And that was the beginning of building that separate entity, and that was methodically planned. But what happened was, as we were playing, Eric, as I've been told before many times, he gets to a point where he gets tired of it, or he wants to change things or whatever. And somehow I think that became a conflict to whatever the business model that had been already made a commitment. And I know that we were in UK, and Eric Burdon is the big star, and we were nobody. And we go there in London, and Eric is not showing up. And we had to play that gig without Eric. I was afraid they're going to throw beer bottles at us. They actually, standing ovation, they went crazy. They loved us. It was like unbelievable. And we didn't know where
no vocals? That was all instrumental?
No, it was vocals.
Okay.
Instrumental, vocal, whatever. Howard Scott, everybody else sings.
Sure.
I got an excuse not to sing because I have my harmonica in my mouth. So, but Eric wasn't to be found. Then we found out he was exhausted, and he had actually just hid out up in Newcastle at his mom or his parents. And then we reunited for a moment as I was trying to get back to the United States because I didn't have a visa. And Eric got back in, and I got to the Fillmore in New York just 10 minutes before we had to get up and play, after 2 days of exhaustion trying to get through customs and immigration, whatever. And we got up there and played, and they had no idea what I went through. And in the middle, right after my solo on Mother Earth, Hale Brown, when Eric about to come in and sing again, Hale Brown goes, da, 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 and just stopped everybody. And the whole place was like silent. You could hear a pin drop. And Hale gets off his drum set and says, "I'm tired of playing this Uncle Tom music," yelling at Eric. And then we went backstage for a minute. I don't remember. I went blank because I was so damn tired, exhausted. And all I remember is we went back up and played. And that was like one of the last gigs Eric did with us.
Wow. Well, you guys certainly formed a hell of a unit. The music is still alive today, and of course you've had your great solo records. Now one song that just will not die, and certainly an anthem for the Latino, culture, the car culture, and people that love to listen to music and drive, is Lowrider. Talk about making Lowrider and why you feel it has such a lasting quality.
I have my ideas, but I really, we know that the music industry lot of it is just opportunities, magic, or luck, or whatever. I mean, it's like you got to be in love with the music without whether you have a hit or not. I mean, it's brutal if you're going to try and do something for the sake of having a hit, and that's like a lottery ticket. So the hits that we had in real time, with the biggest hits, was Spill the Wine, Cisco. I mean, not Spill. Yeah, Spill the Wine. Yes, I'm sorry, Spill the Wine, Cisco Kid, Slipping into Darkness. World is a Ghetto was like the #1 album on Billboard and all that. Lowrider wasn't a huge hit, but it took on a persona, starting with Up in Smoke with Cheech and Chong, and a lot of people could connect with it, especially the Latinos, Chicanos. It was like a Woodstock. You know, it's like one of those fluke things, and everybody else trying to create a Woodstock, and it's not going to happen. You know, it's just one of those things that just took on a life of its own, and my grandkids know Lowrider. I mean, you know, they don't know Cisco Kid is Living in the Darkness, but Lowrider has taken on a life. It's almost like the tune Tequila. You know, that it's like a standard that has become its own thing, evolved and used in just about anything and everything for on and on and on. It's incredible. That jam was actually, Charles and I was not even in the studio when Hale Brown and some of the other guys were playing this, you know, grooving this track. And matter of fact, Hale says the drumming on that was like almost he played it backwards. He didn't intend, and there was this pocket. And Charles and I I remember we were out drinking tequila on a pier out in Long Beach, trying to go crab hunting, fishing, and that. We were just having a good time. And we came into the studio early that morning, and Charles was always, you know, he had the Lowrider car and all that, and he started to go low rider, and when he started singing that, that became that, and then I came up with the melody da 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 da. But because Charles and I was the horn section, and that's the line that I could do on the harmonica. Charles was always very how would you say, accommodating with my limitations and what I was able to create with my harmonica. He would always embrace that, and so we had a great, you know, a great musical thing, Charles and I, with harmonica and saxophone, and so that's how that came about, you know.
Well, it's a great legacy, and the music, like I say, will live forever. I know you guys have been nominated 3 times for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is inevitable. Sooner or later, you belong there. We can't wait to have you among, you know, those greats. And I know some people think, you know, it's just an award. You know, it's kind of some political parties, you know, choice. But we know you're there anyway in our hearts, and certainly, you know, in our cars and our stereos. Talk about your harmonica line, because I know it's near and dear to you, and, you know, from the NAMM show to stores all over the world, you know, LEE OSKAR, you know, harmonicas are a great instrument. Tell us about what the difference is with your harmonica and why the players should check you out.
Well, I have to just start with myself. I mean, as a player, for many, many years, I was more or less very frustrated with harmonicas, the quality, and, you know, all that stuff, and what was available. And when I finally started to see a little bit of money, starting with Eric Burdon and War, wow, I can buy harmonicas, and, you know, everybody else would be spending the money on leasing Ferraris or whatever. I would just take any money I had and buy hundreds of harmonicas, sometimes hundreds at a time, just to find maybe 1 out of every 10 that was good. And with that said, I realized how frustrated I would be to have a harmonica, not to have a harmonica that would live up to my demands. So I've been tinkering with harmonicas, of course, since I was very young, and I had my ideas about what would make a better harmonica. And at this point in time, when I would have so many harmonicas and only find a few, 1 out of every 10 that was good, I was definitely on a mission to find somebody, some company somewhere that makes harmonicas to connect and collaborate and take what I need and my ideas and make a harmonica that I could really, really depend on. And so when I was in Japan, I found out about this factory called Tombo, Tombo, which coincidentally means dragonfly, and my first solo album had a dragonfly on it. So that album called LEE OSKAR, just LEE OSKAR with a dragonfly, was really big in Japan, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know that the factory when I met them called Tombo meant dragonfly. Well, they were huge fans of my music, and I wanted to manufacture and collaborate with the factory, not just let them use my name. So flying back and forth, did a lot of TV commercials, producing the music for a lot of TV commercials in Japan. Gave me an opportunity to go back and forth and meet with Mano family, who owns Tombo Factory, and Yasuharu Mano, the president then. We would talk about different ideas, and then out of that came the LEE OSKAR harmonicas, which is now 32 years been manufacturing with Tombo, and I'm very proud of the quality control. I mean, it's like next to none, and how it's grown. Now, I make, just a little side note, I make different tunings, meaning, I don't mean the keys, I make all keys, but tunings mean different scales. And it's been there for like 30 years. But I realized just recently that I need to start market and promote my whole harmonica system to musicians, singer-songwriters, guitar players, people who already sing, people who already use harmonica but don't consider themselves a harmonica player, just enhancing their music. They're not really aware about the other tunings I make and how easy it is to use for other kinds of music rather than just folk or campfire or blues. With the other tunings, you can do Latin music, you can do reggae, you can do tango, you can clave, African. There's so many genres of music that these four tunings that I make will be able to cover without have to be a virtuoso, without even have to be a harmonica player. Just breathe in and out, and it fits those modes. So I have a site now that's called the LeeOskarQuickGuide.com. And you just go to LeeOskar.com, and then you'll see a guitar pick. That's where you click. It says Quick Guide, and they'll take you to this site that you log in, register, and then log in. And it shows you in every key all the guitar chords and where the chords are on your harmonica and what kind of music you can use it for. Same thing for ukulele, same thing for piano. And I'm going to be expanding this whole website as a promotional tool to educate people on how amazing harmonica can be without having to be a player, so to speak, but just applying it to any kinds of music that you're already doing and enhance it with harmonica sound.
Well, it's so exciting to see that that you offer, as a tool to so many, new musicians. What advice over all you've seen in the industry do you give to young creative people today on the music side, on the creative side? What do you suggest to them as far as charting their own course to really find their own style and their own lane to, excel at?
Well, that's a great question. I want to say two things. One is about the music, and one is about the business. On the music side, the best you can do is to connect with your own soul and be honest. Instead of trying to pitch and toe what is popular or what is in, and because sometimes people chase after things and the magic is left out. The magic is your naiveness, the things you reach for. I mean, the real art is something you can't even measure, something you can't even. There's no comparison. So if you're really, really into your music, and you want to make a living supporting yourself on your art, as you hear a lot of people starving artists, that's because there's no compromise, and they're going to do it and believe that in that more than anything. Is that if you're going to do the business, you've got to be in the business too. You don't have to be a genius or the smartest, but one bottom line is to it all is you got to understand how it works and take responsibility in whatever you agree on. So don't agree just because you got a contract to sign. Agree because you understand what the contract means. So get advice or whatever. Because the bottom line is to be responsible. If you don't know what you agreed to, you're being dishonest. And if you're going to be honest about it and you understand how it works, then the bottom line is to it all is that you only earn what you know how to claim. If you didn't know how to claim it, you really didn't earn it, and you're just lucky that somebody sent you a check and don't even know why. So and maybe they sent you too much. Maybe they didn't send you enough. But so I believe as a musician who want to make a lifestyle out of their music or like any art, I take responsibility, understand how it works, and support. So you can really be in good shape. Let's say about maintaining a lifestyle that you really, really care about.
Well, that's great advice. And as far as the business side, there's just so many tools now for artists to independently record their music and get it out there and really start to develop their audience. So now they have some track record or leverage, with these companies out there. And with so few record labels and record stores remaining, this is a great opportunity for artists to kind of go show and prove as opposed to out there begging for, an imaginary record deal or expecting these companies to develop talent. So what advice would you give to that young artist out there to really go out there and kind of build their buzz a little bit as opposed to waste their time trying to find a deal, when in essence that's really signing all their rights away?
Well, without even signing your rights away, even with the new technologies that are fantastic, all those things in cyberspace, all the media and all that, yeah, those are great tools. But there's millions of people using those tools, and that doesn't mean that just because you're going to try to leverage that, thinking I'm just going to be on there, that's going to make it happen. It's not going to be. You're not going to have the exposure. So my suggestion is, no matter what, it's the same formula. Is that if you're going to create demand, you're going to get people to support your art and become a fan or consumer or supporting you in whichever ways you're, financially or whatever it is. It's got to start from small to big. It's not just saying, "Oh man, I'm putting something on YouTube." It's like somebody says, "Man, I just got 1,000 hits." Well, you know what? When you want to buy a hammer or screwdriver, you might think, "Well, I got to find an address for Sears," because Sears has already marketed and promoted a very, very, with a lot of exposure, a window. So you're looking for Sears. Now, when you go into the Yellow Pages looking for Sears, how many ads and addresses did your thumb touch? That's just like getting hits. Have it touched while you're still looking for Sears? So getting hits is not the key. It's the key is to people to stop there because that's what they want to go, not because they're trying to find something else. And in doing so, you gotta spend money, or you gotta spend promotional. You gotta do a lot of things. It doesn't automatically happen. And if you're playing live gigs, and you got fans at those clubs, this is where you can do your building blocks. Because everyone that walks out of there, if you know how to keep them in the momentum, not just the moment they're there, but after you play the gig, you have those follow-ups. You have many things. you can build something from small, and every time it adds, there are more people on Facebook, on this and that. That's how you do it. It was no different than when it was just record companies. It's just a different technology. You still have to market and promote it. Nothing happens just because you're good. Nothing happens just because you put it on a particular media site. There's millions that do that. It's not going to be seen. You've got to start with the people who have already had an experience with you, and make that experience keep momentum going.
Well, Lee, those are certainly wise words to follow. We really appreciate your new music and your line of harmonicas for musicians everywhere. We thank you so much for your time and can't wait to see you live in concert.
Hey, Jay, thank you very much. I appreciate the acknowledgement. Appreciate it. And by the way, can I just say one quick thing? You know, the band, Lowrider Band, that's very important to me, is that's me and my colleagues. That's Howard Scott, Hale Brown, and B.B. Dickerson is not doing well right now, unfortunately, but myself. So basically there are 5 of us alive, and 4 of us is the Lowrider Band. And the band War is really just a copy band with one original member, Lonnie Jordan. And the person who owns the name War, just for records, so you all know, is Jerry Goldstein, the ex-manager. So to me, that's a very sensitive thing, because I want people, if they really want to hear the music we created, as you know, that we created, and play it, not homogenized, but play it like we do every day. It's different. It's like a jam. Man, it's in the zone. It's in the moment. Instead of the name War, you should just think of the name Lowrider Band, because that's what we are now. We're not allowed to say war. We're not allowed to say formally of war when it comes to selling tickets, only in journalism. And I don't want people to get caught up with branding. I want people to be more caught up with the essence of what we do, and that's the music, and that's the Lowrider Band today.
Well, we certainly know that. We'll spread the word. The original members of War are the Lowrider Band, and please keep that music coming, and we love your spirit. Thank you so much, Lee.
Thank you again, Jay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We can get it.